tragedy that makes you question why God allowed it, it has a purpose. So today we are going to study about the lives of 3 characters, and we will see how these 3 characters actually parallel or mirror the lives that we have. So the first character that we will study is Job. We all know Job's story. Job is a picture of suffering and tragedy and pain and loss. Kung merong may pinakamabigat na pinagdaanan sa mundo, si Job na yon. He once had everything, but he literally lost everything. Second character that we will study is the life of Ruth. Ruth came from a not so reputable background. She was a Moabite, which was a tribe or a clan formed from an incestual relationship. So hindi maganda masyado yung reputasyon ni Ruth. But she is blessed enough to have married a Jew. It looked like everything was going well for Ruth until her husband died. But not only that, even her sister's husband died. And also her father-in-law, which left them nothing because they are all widows. Third character that we will study is the life of Joseph. Joseph was the 11th among 12 sons of Jacob, but he was the favorite because he was the firstborn son to Jacob's well-loved wife Rachel. However, being the favorite, his brothers hated him. Kaya naman, pinagtangkaan nila yung buhay ni Joseph. But eventually, they came up with that decision na hindi na lang nila siya papatayin, but they will sell him to Midianite traders. And that is where the story of Joseph unfolds. These are not just fairy tale characters. These are real-life characters who went through real-life situations, and yet they experienced the biggest turnaround of their lives. What is common about these characters is that they once had a normal life. Everything was going smooth until, boom, tragedy happened. Tragedy disrupts everything that is going well in your life. You are often unprepared for it, and that is where your life starts to shift. Job went from being a wealthy man to being an empty man. Ruth went from being happily married to the love of her life and being excited about the future to losing the very person that she loves and even losing their family's sustenance. Joseph went from being the favorite of his father, even wearing that coat of many colors, to being sold as a slave to Midianite traders. Nobody wants tragedy to happen, but let me tell you this, even that painful experience, that tragedy that you hate the most, that tragedy that makes you question why God allowed it, it has a purpose. 1 Peter 4:12-13 says, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice, insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, that you may also rejoice and be glad when His glory is revealed." It is not a surprise if you go through trials. Huwag na tayong mag-question, huwag na tayong magulat, huwag na tayong shocked. Testings and trials are a part of life. I hope it's that easy. But the next part of the storyline is not immediately triumph. They will have to go through the point of tarrying and testing. It is not the tragedy that is the most painful part, but I can say that the tarrying or the waiting and the testing and the refining of our characters could be the toughest part of the whole journey of this life. But it can be the best part of them all. It is the part where our faith is best exercised. We can never learn faith in the good times, in the mountaintop seasons. We can only learn faith when we are at the valleys, at our low points. Job had to experience having 3 friends whom he thought would be his confidant or will encourage him during his tough times. But instead, these 3 friends actually judged him and even questioned his integrity when, in fact, God Himself called Job as blameless. And not only that, Job feels that God is really far away from him during these times. Can you relate? Here, Job is tested on his faith in God. Let's talk about Ruth. Ruth chose to stay with her mother-in-law, even if her mother-in-law was asking her to go home. Ruth made that vow to her mother-in-law, Naomi. But that also means that she will have to endure living in a foreign land where she can be discriminated because of her race and her background. Here, Ruth is tested of her obedience to the God she vowed to be loyal to. Now, what about Joseph? Joseph was sold as a slave in Egypt. And while he was performing his best, he was even recognized and promoted for his job. But the wife of Potiphar, his boss, wanted to be with Joseph. So she planned to seduce him every day. Imagine that kind of testing against temptation. But Joseph kept his integrity. And when you thought God would reward you for not giving in to temptation, the opposite happened. He was falsely accused of rape, and so he was sent to prison. It seems like everything is spiraling down for Joseph, but that's not all. He was forgotten by a friend that he helped. Here, Joseph was tested on the integrity of his character. We don't know the measure of our faith in God until we experience the low times, until we experience the part where we lose control and just have no choice but to surrender everything to God and believe that He can rescue us in the midst of that trouble. But just like what I said, this is the best part of the journey, the tarrying and the testing. It is not easy, but it prepares us for the blessing. It matures us, just like what is said here in James chapter 1 verses 2 to 4. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. You will be perfect and complete when you go through and endure testings and trials. Have you seen people who are already at a ripe age and yet they act so immaturely? Isa sa mga possible na reasons why they have not become mature is because they tried to escape that part of the process, that testing, that trials. They tried to escape it. They tried the easy way out of it. It is biblical that when we endure the trials of many kinds, we will be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. And that is the perfect season for God to bestow the blessings that we are praying for. God is more than willing to give us the blessings, but He doesn't want to give it to us at a time that we are still babies and immature and don't know how to handle the blessings that He wants to give us. From tragedy to tarrying and testing, and now the turnaround. Friends, do not underestimate the power of God to turn around your situation in just an instant. He is the God of breakthroughs, of miracles, of things that can happen suddenly. It will happen. So what happened to our characters? Job went from being empty to being exceedingly rich. Job 42 verse 10 says, "And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." When did that turnaround happen? When he prayed for his friends. Oo, yung mga friends niya na walang ibang ginawa kundi i-persecute siya at i-point out yung mali niya, kuno. Instead of being mad to them, initially he was. But Job learned to pray for his friends, even when they have actually wronged him. And that is when the turnaround happened for Job. And Ruth went from being an outcast, from being a foreigner in the land of the Jews, to being the owner of the field when she met Boaz, their kinsman redeemer. Ruth is a very lovely love story. You should read about it if you haven't. But let me just go to the conclusion of the matter. Ruth 4:13 to 15 says, "So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel." Wow, from being a widow, not having a husband, having a mother-in-law who doesn't have a husband, to having a child. And you know what? Ruth is a great-great-grandmother of the well-known King David. And it is because of her obedience to the God whom she vowed to follow that she experienced these kinds of blessings. Like, who would have thought that Ruth, who was an outcast, who had a very dark background, would be someone who is renowned in the whole Bible and even part of the lineage of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. See, God doesn't look at us in our backgrounds, in our pasts, no matter how dark it is, no matter what kind of labels are the people telling you, you are precious in God's eyes, and God sees more than what you see. God is able to exceed your expectations if you obey and follow his commands. Well, you know what happened to Joseph. He went from being a prisoner to being in the position of power. And how did that happen? Because even in the prison cell, Joseph was faithful that even the warden trusted him in looking after all the prisoners. Imagine that kind of integrity that he kept when he was in the field with his brothers tending the sheep, when he was in the house of Potiphar, being in charge of the house, and when he was in the prison cell. He kept his character intact. He did not waver in the midst of temptation, of hard circumstances. And what did God do? God brought him out of the prison cell to be second in charge under Pharaoh and to lead the feeding of the people during a famine. You should read all the details of these stories. I'll link the verses down below. He even saved not only his family when they were starving and dying in famine, but he saved a whole nation from dying, and that is because of his obedience to God and his constant devotion to the God of Israel. Genesis 41 verse 39 says, "Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne, I will be greater than you.' Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, 'See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt.'" These stories ended on a high note, but it wasn't easy. And so it is with our lives. It is not easy to go through your season of challenges, of waiting. Waiting alone is a hard season to be in. I know that for sure. We just have to endure this season because we know at the very end of it, God can just turn these things around for our good and for his glory. Life goes from tragedy to tarrying and testing to turn around. And it is a cycle. But there is another T in this journey that is not readily stated. And that T is time. Time is not your enemy. Time is actually our ally because God himself holds time in his hands. He is the author of time. He is not bound by our schedules and our timelines and our goal-setting notes that by this age I should be this, by this age I should be achieving this kind of stuff. But God is not boxed. God is not bound by all of that. He is the author of time. And we know in Ecclesiastes 3:11 it says, "He makes all things beautiful in its time." So the whole journey of Job, of Ruth, of Joseph, of every one of us, it is all placed lovingly in the palms of the Lord, and nothing about it goes out of his control. Again, time is our ally here. God can just quickly switch the situation from tragedy to turnaround. But the whole process of tarrying and testing is needed for the characters that we have talked about to be ready for the blessing. And of course, it applies to us. Let me close with this verse that a friend shared to me before I was able to write about this vlog that I'm sharing to you right now. It is found in Isaiah chapter 60 verse 22. The least one shall become a clan, and the smallest one a mighty nation. I am the Lord, and it's time. I will hasten it. When the time is right, He will make it happen. So do not lose hope in your situation. If you are still in that season of tarrying, if you are still in that season of waiting and testing, you just really have to endure, because there is no way around it. There are no shortcuts to achieving what God has prepared for us. One version says, in its time, I will do it swiftly. Swiftly. Do not underestimate the power of God to turn your situation around from being really down to being victorious. So let's trust God's promise in Romans 8:28 that He makes all things work together for good to those who love God and to those who have been called according to His purpose. God bless everyone.